This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chris Callahan speaking. I'm with University of Vermont Extension, and I manage the agricultural engineering program within Extension. This is the latest in the UVM Extension Hort Team webinar series that we've been doing this summer, covering a wide range of topics. Today's topic is a virtual tour of wash pack projects, so focused on post-harvest areas on the farm. We've been talking a lot about production and so far, and it's going to be interesting to get into a little bit of post-harvest work. We are grateful to Andy Chamberlin, who's on the UVM Extension Agricultural Engineering team, who is going to provide a nice photo tour of a variety of projects around the state and that we've been involved with between he, myself, and Hans Estrin, who runs the Vermont CAPS program. With that, Andy, take it away.
Hey there, welcome everybody, and thanks Chris for the introduction. So as he said, today we're gonna give you a little wash pack tour. It's one of my areas of specialty in Extension. So I'm pleased to share some photos of projects going on all around the state. So to get started, I first want to talk about flow. When thinking about the pack shed, we tend to think about flow of people, product, and water. And we try to think about the direction of all those things that make sure that it's a smooth, single pass flow. It minimizes wasted energy, and it's in the direction from the field to consumer. So in this diagram, you can see that product comes in, it gets washed, it goes to the cooler, and then it gets packed and moves out in a very linear fashion, front to back, or back to front probably in this case. Also thinking about drains and compost and where those waste streams are headed. Not all pack sheds are set up quite linearly like this, and it can totally work in a U-shaped system as well, so coming in and out kind of the front door, at least the same side of the building. Sometimes the cooler and the packing can flip-flop around, but the point being that you're trying to intentionally think about the flow of product so you're not wasting steps and time and tripping over each other, your crew, crates, etc. So just wanted to start off with that frame of mind a little bit as you're thinking about your pack shed and how you might be building it or renovating what you've got. So what does this look like? We wanted to give you some visual examples that aren't just diagrams and really show you what farmers are doing. So you might start from a dark and dank dairy barn. You know, a place like this is not very welcoming and doesn't exactly scream, hey, let's wash clean produce in here. But with a little bit of effort, you can turn this space into an area so clean you can eat off of it. And both of those are quotes that I've heard from farmers talking about their pack shed. Now, before we get too deep into the conversation here, I did want to share that we've organized case studies of many of these farms that we're talking about. So these are in-depth video interview case studies, also a written blog post, also a printable PDF fact sheet, all available at these short links listed on the screen here, or summarized at the short link on the bottom. The bottom left corner of many of these slides have a link for more information, so you can check out our blog where all this resides. So a lot of these case studies have nuances and vary from case to case. So they range in price points, they range in renovation versus new construction, they range from pole barn to dairy barn to complete custom barn house. So hopefully we're trying to get enough examples to cover the board and give you ideas because every farm is different. So with that, we'll start off with a few shots from Mighty Food Farm. It was a new construction, which includes wash pack and a CSA room. So this barn here is just a single floor barn, and it's about 2/3 wash pack and 1/3 CSA room. So customers actually come to the farm, and it's kind of like a miniature store on one end, which makes it very nice flow for bringing product in. The coolers are in the middle of the building, and then the CSA room is on the other side. The planning started with a simple sketch, And as you can see here, it's laid out like I just mentioned with coolers in the middle. Here's a shot showing it mid-season with stacks of produce all around, barrel washer in the middle, coolers are the shiny objects in the back of the room. One thing that they do at Mighty Food Farm is they have very dedicated staff, and this guy here is the primary washer. So he is trained, he has his systems down, and he washes almost all the vegetables all the time. Other people are trained to do it, obviously, but he's kind of the chief of the wash pack, and it keeps their farm running smooth and lean. Moving over to Footprint Farm, this was a new construction which included a barn house. So they live on the second floor and work on the bottom. They started out with engineering drawings, laying out their whole plan, because obviously this was a much larger project, so it needed to be more detailed and more thought out. To simplify that engineering drawing, here is just a simple schematic that we use for educating and share in presentations that just kind of shows the basic layout, how they've got a workshop on one side, a fairly large cooler, they got a bathroom there, and the main wash pack space highlighted on the top right, along with a concrete apron outside. Now here's a shot to kind of help put that together. The concrete apron is on the side facing us to the right. Like I said, they live upstairs. They've got an overhang on one side with plans for that on the right as well. So that's where they keep their picnic table. That's where they break with their crew during the summer. And moving in, you can see that a little bit better. And then this next shot shows that this is where they do a lot of their bulk or really heavy root washing outside, or they can wash their totes outside and let things dry and drip and keep the bulk of the dirt out of the building. Because in the building, they're trying to keep it clean and organized. So they've got nice bright ceilings, bright walls, cleanable surfaces, nice floor that's concrete, easy to drain. They've got floor drainage in there, squeegees, and easy to sweep it out. I will note that when I show this photo to Taylor, she's like, oh man, that was so long ago. It's changed so much. Well, it hasn't changed a ton, but they've moved some of the racking and put in a couple tables instead, and that's where they keep their scales. And the point that I like to highlight there is that she's always adapting and they're always changing, and they have a space that's flexible to allow that to happen, no matter whether they're packing tomatoes, packing lettuce, or this year, now they're packing individual CSA shares for their newly doubled CSA thanks to COVID demand. So I haven't been there this summer, but I imagine it's laid out entirely differently and even more productive. So this photo is taken just turning to the left of that last photo. And this is a setup of their greens wash line. So they set their totes up on those wire racks as they come in. They get triple washed in the stock tanks, scooped up in those orange baskets, and spun dry in a washing machine green spinner, then turned and weighed out into the totes. You can see there's a whiteboard to the right, and on that whiteboard, they lay out the orders for each of the customers so they can weigh out the precise amount, mark on the tote, so it goes into the cooler ready to go to the customer. Now, Last Resort Farm is a dairy barn renovation. So there's a lot of those in the Northeast. So we thought that would be a great example to share as well. So many of you are familiar with dairy barns, often long and narrow spaces. There's some pillars or piers, in the middle to hold up the roof of the second floor and things like that that make it a little bit tricky to work around. Often a gutter or floor drain is already in the slab, which actually can work out quite well. Now, Silas has a couple different areas here that make his wash pack area special, and that's he's got 4 different coolers, all that can be controlled to different temperatures and humidities. So that's kind of nice for storing different crops really well. Some can even be a warm room for germinating things or storing squash compared to storing fruit earlier in the season. They've got an office and bathroom tucked in here as well, which makes it really slick for him. Here's a shot moving inside. Obviously, you can see it's not so dark and dank anymore. They added some nice large windows to let in natural light. They've painted the walls and they've added a truss core material, a plastic sheathing on the ceiling to help with moisture and to add a lot of brightness. He did a lot of floor work to make it slope to the gutter drain and smooth it out as well. Here's a shot of the drain, which works great for both heavy soil loaded products or just the bulk water of washing things in there. One note here is that he has mentioned that this grate is a bit coarse for rolling wheels over like a hand truck to get into the coolers. And the insulated floor, which is built up, as you can see, to that cooler makes it a step to get in, which is a little bit less than ideal, but just something to note. Here's a shot inside the cooler before shelves were installed. As you can see, they just use masking tape to help organize different products on the walls and labels, and that works just fine. I wanted to share this photo because it's a simple DIY drying rack. So it's 2x4 construction and a couple box fans on the end, and that helps dry out either product or your totes after washing so they can be stored dry. And one of the later things of their project was they added a loading dock outside, which is covered. And boy, that's been nice. They really like the addition of that because they're not carrying all the product in and out by hand. It enables them to wholesale crops and load onto trucks and store bins outside under a roof to keep it protected from birds and weather and all that. Next, we move over to Route 5 Farm, which is a pole barn renovation. They already had the pole barn to begin with, and they wanted to kind of finish it or renovate it to suit their needs for their growing vegetable farm. Here's the simple layout of the wash pack space there. They've got a cooler in the corner and a covered apron or so concrete all around the outside of two sides of their building. Here you could almost call it a barn house because their house is technically connected to the barn as well via kind of a covered porch area, which is really nice, but slightly separated. So right there on farm, they've got the covered space, as you can see, on the near side. Moving inside, they've got big doors on 3 of the 4 sides, which allow airflow, allows a lot of light, allows easy movement of product. And this is a very modular space as well. So whether they're packing sauerkraut, because this is actually a certified food processing space, or just washing vegetables, they can set up and reorganize the space to whatever's most efficient for them. Now, it was a previous gravel floor in this pole barn, and they went in and added a floor drain and concrete floors, and they love that because it makes it so easy to clean stuff up. They've also implemented, they worked with a welder to make some frames for their bulk tanks for washing greens or other crops. And this is great because 1, it brings them up to an ergonomic height, and 2, they can lay the bin on their side to dry. They're not laying on the floor. And when they're full of water, they're designed strong enough that you can actually move them around with a pallet jack should they need to move something like when they're still full of water. So that just adds some flexibility. This is a shot outside just showing the benefits of that covered space. It really allows them to store all their totes, all their bins, their crates, different totes for different needs, obviously. And having these right there and accessible, but not in your working space is so nice. So having it outside, all on the same floor where you can wheel things from one area to the next is super slick. And that's Danielle's favorite motto, is everything on wheels. And it just allows you to be flexible and pivot whatever you're doing, allows easy cleaning to get underneath tables and around equipment and stuff like that. So even the storage cabinet, they rigged up on a dolly, so it's on wheels and can move it out of the way or where they're working. Next, we move over to New Leaf Organics, another dairy barn renovation. Similar in the fact that it is a kind of a long, narrow barn, but she has 3 coolers, flower arranging space, as well as shares part of the area with a caterer on site. So that's nice in the aspect that gives a little more rent to the farm for year-round cash flow. And that space also is perfect because all the extra produce can be used for the catering events and things like that. She had previously been washing in the upstairs part of the barn and doing the flower arranging in there. But as you can see, it gets cluttered, and there was always concerned about all this excess water on the wooden floor, and barn health was critical. So kind of doing something about that meant getting off the wood floor or being really cautious about water management, which is, it's just challenging on a vegetable farm when there's so much water around. So that meant moving downstairs where it was dark and dank and dirty and messy. And it meant some major renovations. And she took the added steps of jackhammering out the old floor to gain a little bit more ceiling height, to slope it appropriately, to add in floor drains where she wanted to, and to make everything on the same level. So it was an added cost, but it made a big difference for the long run on her farm. Here's Jill washing carrots in the new space. As you can see, they added nice big windows to let in a lot more light as well. And light makes a big difference on how cheery and airy and nice of a space it is to work. Here's another shot just stepping back a little bit. You can see veg washing happens to the left corner. Flower arranging is happening in the middle. And then the catering space is on the far side. And then even beyond that, so kind of the other about 25% of the barn is unused, but they went ahead and did the concrete floor in there as well and added doors, and now that's a storage space. So that's where they keep their cartons and containers and boxes and supplies that are needed, and they're readily accessible, but again, they're not right there in the production space getting wet or getting in the way. So that was kind of a unforeseen aspect that she wasn't really planning on, but really glad that she did. And then she's got a couple coolers to the right, which she's got 2 coolers, so she can have 2 different zones, one for vegetables, one for flowers, or whatever the needs are of the season. So those are a couple case studies that we've got full write-ups on and video interviews on and fact sheets on, like I stated. So you can check those out online at the links provided. But I wanted to share that there's a lot of projects in the works, and a lot are being developed, and there's always continuous improvement that can be done, and farmers are moving forward. So I wanted to share that as well, just to give a glimmer of hope and to show that that farms aren't perfect, and a lot of people are making big improvements. So here's a shot from Clearfield Farm. He's in the middle of a renovation, currently working under the side of a barn with this roof, which is a tarp. I mean, they were originally going to put tin over it from the house, but as the farm grew and the house project got put off, the tarp obviously became weathered, and now he's moving inside of a barn, as you can see here. So he's got another large old barn, and he's renovating the bottom of it. So a lot of clean out, a lot of scraping, a lot of painting, a lot of floor work to be done. but this is the status right now, and it's going to be a clean wash pack zone. He's going to have multiple kind of little stations set up, whether it be for washing roots or washing greens, and the whole middle section of the barn is going to be a cooler. So I'm looking forward to following along with his project. Over at Ananda Gardens, they renovated a portion of their barn for wash pack as well. As you can see here, he sheathed the ceiling with a really nice wood to make it a really comfortable space. They didn't want it to feel like a hospital or super white and shiny. They wanted to add some warmth and natural elements to it. So they used wood on the ceiling, but they did use truss core, which is a plastic paneling I mentioned earlier on the walls, where there is going to be a lot of overspray and splashback to contain that moisture. Again, adding windows and adding insulation to really make this space a better area to be in. And when talking to him earlier this summer, he was talking to me about adding on additional coolers and how he can modify and transition into more of the barn, converting it into more wash pack space, because he again has doubled his CSA and it's very quickly outgrown this space. Here's another shot of that truss core on the wall. Over at Hooley Flats Farm, this was a rather dark, low, dusty barn, as you would expect to see that you don't really want to go into. It had been neglected for several years, and with the addition of metal siding and some paint on the ceiling and bright lights, and again, some floor work, brings it into a space that's not so bad to work in at all. So a little bit of finished surface details can go a long way. Small Axe Farm, this is an interesting build as well, actually connected to a greenhouse, which is awesome. Here's a shot from a twilight meeting we had last November that many of our VVBGA community was able to attend, which was fun. And they were mid-construction then with floors installed and insulated, and radiant floor heating, and showing off all the post and beam construction. It was really exciting to see the progress of this space and how they're using it. I stopped in this winter and they had microgreens growing in there, and they've been loving the space. Now I think they've got finished surfaces on the walls, and I think even the ceiling is finished. So I'm looking forward to checking back in with them. Like I said, they've got radiant floor heating fed by an outdoor wood boiler, and that's all integrated into their slab, into their trench drains. And they've reported that that's been one of the best decisions by far. Both the concrete floor and the radiant heat and having an outdoor boiler totally fits for their lifestyle. And here's a shot that they emailed me earlier this spring, just showing how nice it is to be efficient in a clean, large space for bringing in the bounty of their crops. I also wanted to point out that Chris, Hans, and I don't just work in Vermont. We often have calls with people all around. So here's Nettie Fox Farm up in Maine that we worked with to talk about their floor plan, their layout, their flow, and what considerations to take as their renovation goes. And farmers get excited and send us pictures like this, like we're making progress and here it comes. So we're happy to see status updates like this as well. Just like Kettle Song Farm, we've been working with them for a couple years now, and they're finally moving along on their barn build. And this here is a full walk-in herb drying room. So another example how every farm is uniquely different and has different needs to fit their different markets. Shaky Ground Farm is small and diversified, and they're in the process of converting half of this barn into wash pack, and the other half is already a farm stand. So that's another project that's in the works. Same with Spring Song Farm. He's working on kind of one end of a very unique barn that was built onto like 4 or 5 times, very, very old, trying to preserve a lot of that. Like in this section here, he's got a workshop. It's going to be a wood shop area, but he cleaned up the roof and the ceiling, and really preserving the barn and turning it into a wash pack space as well. I threw this shot in here just to show that Hans and I and Chris are missing these farm visits this summer, as this is what we often do and like to do, is walk around your farm, pet the dog, check out the greenhouse, and talk about how we can improve your wash pack as we would. But obviously COVID has restricted our travel this summer, so have to be a little bit virtual tours this year. But here at Foxville Farm, they built a beautiful walk-in cooler, and they're planning to expand as well into a much bigger building. Note this hand wash sink outside, that's pretty slick. Homefront Gardens and Naked Acre Farm is turning their pavilion into an enclosed space. So another in-progress shot to just show that projects can happen in phases, and stuff like getting a roof and a floor is great, and maybe you run with that for a couple seasons until you build up some more cash flow, or you build up your markets, or you decide, you know, where you want to put coolers or what type of walls you want. If you're just doing summer crops, then this could work quite well. But if you're pushing the shoulder seasons, then obviously adding walls will make it a nicer space. Another shot inside, actually using some bathtubs as wash sinks, designed to be cleaned. And then I just wanted to wrap up with planning your project. And these projects are big, they're daunting. A lot goes on with them, no matter you're doing new construction or renovation. So it really helps to think about these in phases. So if you're doing like a new construction, think about phase one, might be the pole barn or a roof, you know, putting in the floor. Phase two, maybe you're adding in walls and insulation. And then phase three could be expansion and completion of porches and overhangs and adding heat and things like that. You know, maybe that happens over the course of spring, summer, fall. Maybe that happens over year 1, 2, and 3. Maybe that happens over year 1, year 5, year 10. You know, you can break it out. You can break out the project. It doesn't have to happen all at once. Same with the renovation. Phase one might be, you know, gutting it and structural improvements. Barns are filled with junk, they're dirty, they're in disrepair. You got to address those concerns first, maybe level the floor, add some drainage. With that, hey, maybe it's usable, so you can work with what you've got. Adding in utilities and coolers, good phase two. Phase three is really bringing in those finished surfaces and other fixtures and equipment to make the space even better. Now I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to our post-harvest webinar that we just released. So project planning for post-harvest efficiency, profitability, and food safety. Chris, Hans, and I have given these workshops all over the Northeast, and it tends to be like a half-day presentation, including hands-on workshops where we can help you one-on-one with whiteboards and help sketch out your ideas and kind of throw things against the wall and see what sticks. Now, obviously, we can't be everywhere and every project is different, but we wanted to do the best we can and help out. So we recorded what we would normally present, and even more than what we might in person, because we could think it through thoroughly, and broke it out into sections into a YouTube playlist. So we break it out, you got an introduction, we talk about produce safety, flow and lean, we give a little bit virtual tour of the farms, some of which you just got a preview of. We talk about buildings and infrastructure, different equipment and tools. Those are excellent sections explaining many different tools available for the wash pack for varying scales. And then executing your plan, where we go deeper in highlighting all the aspects that you should consider to adding into your wash pack area and how to break it up into those phases that I just mentioned. So I invite you to watch this webinar in your own time. As you can see, they're broken up into sections, so you can take it bite by bite, and you're not committed for a 4-hour session at go.uvm.edu/phwebinar down below. We've got more resources available than that. Like I said, we've got a resource of somewhat on all these case studies and various aspects about them on our blog, so check that out, go.uvm.edu/ag-eng to get to our blog. I host a podcast, the Ag Engineering Podcast, so you can check that out. I interview farmers, learning their favorite tools and techniques to improve sustainability on their farm. We share presentations and examples of things like this on our YouTube channel. We're pretty active on social media, both Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at UVMEXTAgEng. There's resources available on a UVM produce safety portal, which houses other fact sheets and farmer provided case studies on this portal. So that's a great resource to both browse and input your project if you've got one. If you're in Vermont, you could join CAPS, the Community Association for Produce Safety. So you can work with other farms to finalize your food safety plan on your farm. And no matter your location, chat with your local extension agents for advice for post-harvest planning. So with that, you can contact us with questions, comments, ideas, packshed innovations, or if you've put some of our suggestions to use, we'd love to hear it. So please let us know. Again, Hans, myself, Andy, and Chris are the produce safety team here at UVM Extension. So give us a follow, shoot us a note, and thanks for joining me on this virtual tour of Wash Pack projects.
Heck of a job, Andy. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I know we've got a small live audience here today, but are there any questions or comments?
Great job, Andy. This is Vern. Really appreciate it. Learn something every time I listen to your presentations. I did have a question about funding, and if you could just give a sense where folks are getting the resources, how many get produce safety improvement grants, for example, or are they availing themselves of the storage facility loans, I think, that FSA offered, things like that?
Yes, great question. They're getting loans and grants from everywhere they can. So I think almost every one of the farms I mentioned did get a produce safety improvement grant from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets that we had the last couple of years. So that funded some finished surfaces, it finished some cooler materials, it supplied some bins and other washing equipment. Those were like $10,000 grants. Farmers have also implemented the low interest food storage facility loans from USDA, as well as the Vermont Farm Fund has been one that's been another low interest option that some of these farms have utilized for funding their projects as well, because obviously they're big projects and can't just cash flow projects like that. So they are utilizing grants, they're utilizing loans, as well as farm financing.
I think the produce safety improvement grant within Vermont is up to about 40 funded projects, just a ballpark number. And I just heard from Caleb over in Maine through the chat that it sounds like Maine is on its way to doing a similar program there.
Oh, awesome.
It's great. Any other comments, questions? Paul, thanks for your comment in the chat box.
Nice work, everybody.
Thank you. Well, thanks guys for listening in on this presentation.
Yeah, Vern, do you want to just queue up what the next session is? I can't remember what we have scheduled for next week.
Next week is going to be fall cover crops with Becky Madden and Laura Johnson of UVM Extension, looking at different species options, and I'm sure they'll talk about seeding methods and small scale drilling equipment and things like that.
Great. Well, I've been posting in short links to a lot of the resources Andy covered today. We'd love to hear from you if you have any additional ideas, questions, or comments on the work we've been doing related to post-harvest areas on produce farms. I think also anybody who has ideas for additional topics for these lunchtime webinars that the Hort team is pulling together, we are all ears and would love to make sure we're putting together content and around topics that matter to you. So give us a shout. If there's nothing else, I think we can wrap up there. Vern, anything else you want to say?
Nope. Thanks again, Andy. Great job. And we'll see you online next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.